You are a turnip. Not the most glamorous start to a story, is it? But here's the thing. In medieval Europe, you're not just any root vegetable. You're the difference between survival and starvation, between a peasant family making it through winter or becoming another casualty of the Little Ice Age. You're about to live through 1,000 years of history from the ground up, literally. The year is 800 AD. Charlemagne just issued his Capitulare de Villis, basically a royal decree about what should be grown in imperial gardens. You're on the list, along with 72 other plants. Congratulations, you've just been officially endorsed by the most powerful man in Western Europe. But you've been around much longer than that. Your ancestors have been feeding humans since the Bronze Age, maybe earlier. The Romans thought you were peasant food, but they still grew you. Now, in this medieval world where a bad harvest means death, you're about to become one of the most important things on Earth. Here's what nobody tells you about being a vegetable in the Middle Ages. You're not passive. You're an active player in a global game of survival, trade, and cultural transformation. You're going to travel further than most humans ever will. You'll cross continents on the Silk Road, sail with Vikings, and eventually you'll help reshape entire civilizations. Your roots run deep. You wake up, if vegetables can be said to wake, in a monastery garden in northern France. It's dawn, and Brother Francis is already out with his hoe. Monastery gardens are basically the Google of medieval agriculture. These monks don't just pray, they're the Steve Jobs of vegetable cultivation. They experiment, they document, they share knowledge across a network that spans from Ireland to Jerusalem. Your particular patch of soil has been worked and reworked for 300 years. The monks add manure from their livestock, ash from their fires, even crushed bones from their meals. Nothing goes to waste here. You're growing in what's essentially a medieval superfood laboratory, but let's be honest about your life expectancy. If you're lucky, you'll make it to harvest. But there's a 1 in 3 chance you'll be eaten by wild boars, destroyed by an early frost, or simply rot in the ground because it rained for 40 days straight. Medieval farming isn't agriculture, it's gambling with dirt. The 3-field system means you're sharing space with different crops each year. This year, you're next to cabbages. Last year, it was beans. Next year, the field will lie fallow, giving the soil a chance to recover. It's crop rotation before anyone really understands why it works. They just know it does. You're not alone in this garden. There are onions, leeks, carrots, though these carrots are purple and white, not orange. That won't happen for another 800 years. There's kale, which the peasants call winter vegetable, because it's literally the only green thing that survives when everything else dies. There are peas and beans, which everyone knows make the soil richer, though they won't understand nitrogen fixation for another millennium. Here's something that would blow a modern mind. You're more nutritious than your 21st century descendants. You're smaller, uglier, and tougher, but you're also packed with nutrients that will be bred out of vegetables in the quest for size and sweetness. You're bitter, fibrous, and take forever to cook, but you're keeping people alive. The geography of survival. You need to understand something about medieval geography. It's not about nations, it's about climate zones. You can grow in England, Scandinavia, Germany, and Poland. Your cousins, the Mediterranean vegetables, they need warmth. Melons from Persia, cucumbers from India, they're the aristocrats of the vegetable world. You're working class. You thrive in cold, wet, miserable conditions that would kill a tomato in minutes. But here's where it gets interesting. You're about to become international. It's 1095, and Pope Urban II just called for the First Crusade. Suddenly, thousands of European knights are marching east, and guess what they're finding? Vegetables they've never seen before, spinach from Persia, eggplants from India, artichokes from North Africa. These crusaders came to conquer the Holy Land, but they're about to be conquered by vegetables. When they return, if they return, they bring seeds. Hidden in pockets, sewn into clothing, sometimes worth more than gold. Because here's the thing about medieval economics. A new vegetable isn't just food. It's status. It's medicine. It's sometimes literally magic, according to the local wise woman. You watch as these exotic newcomers arrive in European gardens. The Arabs have been cultivating them for centuries, using irrigation techniques that make European farming look like children playing in mud. They've got raised beds, companion planting, and they're already writing agricultural treatises while most European nobles can't even read. The Silk Road isn't just bringing silk. Caravans are carrying seeds that will change everything: black radishes from China, ginger from India, though that's technically a root, not a vegetable, but medieval people don't make that distinction. If it grows in the ground and you can eat it, it's a vegetable. You are what you eat and what eats you. Let's talk about your enemies. And no, I don't mean humans. They're actually your best friends, even when they're eating you. Your real enemies are smaller and much more devastating. Fungal infections that turn you black from the inside out. Beetle larvae that bore through your flesh while you're still in the ground. And worst of all, rot. In a world without refrigeration, rot is the final boss of food storage. But humans are clever. They've figured out that if they store you in underground cellars with straw and sand, you can last all winter. They've learned to pickle your cousins, the cabbages, creating sauerkraut. Though they don't call it that yet. They're fermenting, drying, salting, and smoking everything they can. You're stored in the castle's root cellar. It's December now, and you're surrounded by hundreds of other turnips, parsnips, and beets. The temperature hovers just above freezing. Too cold, and you'll turn to mush when you thaw. Too warm, and you'll sprout, using up all your stored energy trying to grow in the dark. Above you, the nobles are feasting on meat. Whole roasted boars, peacocks reassembled with their feathers, elaborate pies filled with live birds that fly out when cut open. But down here in the cellar, you're the real wealth. When January comes and the meat runs out, when the snow is 3 feet deep and nothing green exists for miles, you're what stands between the castle and catastrophe. You're about to be turned into pottage, that thick, gray, endless stew that most medieval people eat every single day. You'll be thrown into a pot with whatever else is available, some barley, maybe a bit of bacon if it's a good day, wild herbs if anyone was smart enough to dry them in summer. You'll cook for hours over a smoky fire until you break down into mush. This pottage is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's baby food and invalid food. It's what you eat when you're rich enough to have a pot, but too poor for anything else. And here's the brutal truth. Most medieval people are too poor for anything else. The spice of life. You're not it. Let's be real. You're not exactly exciting. You're reliable, nutritious, and abundant, but you're not what anyone dreams about. The vegetables people dream about come from the East, and they cost more than a peasant makes in a year. Take black pepper. In medieval London, a pound of pepper costs the same as a pig. Ginger? That's 2 months' wages for a skilled craftsman. These aren't even vegetables technically, but in the medieval mind, if it's plant-based and changes how food tastes, it's all part of the same category. The spice trade is reshaping the world while you sit in your mundane garden. Venice is getting rich controlling the European end of the trade. Arab merchants are making fortunes moving cardamom and cinnamon from India to Egypt, and everyone, everywhere, is trying to figure out how to get these exotic plants to grow in their local soil. They mostly fail. Pepper needs tropical conditions. Nutmeg only grows on a few tiny islands in Indonesia, but that doesn't stop people from trying. Medieval gardeners are the ultimate optimists, planting seeds from distant lands and praying for miracles. Meanwhile, you're developing regional varieties. English turnips are different from German turnips are different from Polish turnips. Each region's soil, climate, and cultivation methods are creating distinct cultivars. You're evolving in real time, adapting to local conditions in ways that would fascinate Darwin if he'd been born 600 years earlier. The Viking vegetable voyages. It's 950 AD, and you're about to go on an adventure. You've been pulled from the ground in Denmark, and now you're being loaded onto a longship. The Vikings aren't just raiders, they're farmers, traders, and surprisingly sophisticated vegetable cultivators. You're sailing to Iceland, where the growing season is roughly 15 minutes long and the soil is basically volcanic ash. But the Vikings are stubborn. They're going to grow vegetables if it kills them, and it might. In their homeland, the Vikings grew you alongside cabbages, peas, beans, and onions. They had herb gardens with dill, mustard, and thyme. They foraged for wild vegetables, nettles, dock, lamb's quarters. They knew which mushrooms would feed you and which would show you the face of Odin before you died. But Iceland is different. The first settlers tried to grow barley and failed spectacularly. Now they're focusing on hardier crops, and you're the hardiest of them all. You can handle the cold, the wind, the ridiculous lack of sunlight. You become a cornerstone of Icelandic survival. From Iceland, you'll travel to Greenland, where Eric the Red is trying to convince people that this frozen wasteland is actually green and pleasant. Spoiler alert, it's not. But you'll grow there, barely, just enough to keep the colony alive for a few more generations before it mysteriously disappears. Some of your cousins will even make it to Vinland, what will one day be called North America. The Vikings will try to establish settlements there, and they'll bring you along. You'll be among the first European vegetables to touch American soil 500 years before Columbus. Though, to be fair, the indigenous peoples have their own vegetables that make you look pretty pathetic. Squashes, beans, and corn that would blow medieval minds if they knew about them. The social ladder of vegetables. Here's something nobody talks about. Vegetables have social classes. You, as a turnip, are firmly working class. You're the vegetable equivalent of a peasant, hardy, reliable, unglamorous. At the top of the vegetable hierarchy are the exotics, artichokes, brought by the Arabs to Spain, considered so luxurious that Catherine de' Medici will later cause a scandal by eating them in public. Asparagus, which only the wealthy can afford because it takes 3 years to establish a bed and yields so little. Then there are the middle-class vegetables. Cabbages, respectable, versatile, but still common. Leeks, the national vegetable of Wales, which tells you something about Welsh nationalism and also Welsh cuisine. Carrots, increasingly popular but still purple or white. The orange carrot is centuries away, waiting to be developed by Dutch farmers who want to honor William of Orange. Below you on the social ladder? Not much. Maybe wild roots that desperate people dig up during famines. Maybe the weeds that grow in abandoned fields, though honestly, medieval people eat those too. Lamb's quarters, purslane, chickweed. What modern people spray with herbicide, medieval people put in their pottage. But here's your secret advantage. You don't care about social status. You'll grow for anyone. A king's garden, a peasant's strip, a monk's cloister. You're equally at home. You're the democratic vegetable in a profoundly undemocratic age. Medicine or magic? In the medieval mind, you're not just food, you're medicine. Every vegetable has humoral properties. You're considered cold and moist, which means you're good for treating hot and dry conditions like fevers. This is completely wrong, of course, but it's a sophisticated system of completely wrong, developed over centuries by Greek, Roman, and Arab physicians. The village-wise woman knows you can treat coughs when mixed with honey. She knows raw turnip juice can soothe burns. She's not entirely wrong. You do have vitamin C and antimicrobial compounds. But she also thinks you can cure lunacy if harvested under a full moon, so let's not give her too much credit. In monastery infirmaries, monks are creating elaborate herbals, illustrated manuscripts showing every medicinal plant. You're in there, drawn with surprising accuracy by someone who's spent hours studying your leaves, your roots, your purple-white flowers that most people never see because you're harvested before you bloom. The Arabs are way ahead of everyone else in vegetable medicine. They've got texts from ancient Persia, translations of Greek works, and their own centuries of experimentation. They know that spinach helps with digestion, it does. That cucumbers cool the body, they do. And that bitter vegetables stimulate appetite, they absolutely do. Meanwhile, European physicians are still arguing about whether vegetables cause melancholy. Some say eating too many vegetables makes you sad because they're earthy and drag your spirits down. Others say vegetables purge bad humors and should be eaten daily. The patients mostly just eat what they can afford and hope for the best. The vegetable economy. You need to understand, in medieval Europe, you're not just food, you're currency, you're taxation. You're the reason wars are fought and peace treaties signed. Peasants pay their rent in vegetables. A typical payment might be 12 bushels of turnips, 6 of parsnips, and 20 cabbages, due at Michaelmas. Can't pay? You lose your land. It's that simple and that brutal. Market days are vegetable days. Every town has its weekly market where farmers bring their produce. The quantities are carefully regulated. You can't sell vegetables before the bell rings. You can't buy wholesale and sell retail. That's forestalling, and it's illegal. You can't even sell vegetables from your garden if you're within a mile of the town walls on market day. That's also illegal. The guild system controls who can sell what. Gardeners have their guild, separate from farmers. Fruiterers have their own guild. There are specific regulations about where onions can be sold versus leeks, where local vegetables can be displayed versus foreign imports. And the prices, they fluctuate wildly. After a good harvest, you're worth almost nothing. Peasants feed you to pigs. After a bad harvest, you're worth your weight in silver. During the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, people will literally kill each other over stored turnips. That's not an exaggeration. Court records show murders over root cellars. The world changes. You don't. It's 1347. The Black Death has arrived in Europe. 1/3 of the population is about to die, and everything is about to change. Everything except you. While humans are dying in unprecedented numbers, you keep growing. Actually, you grow better than ever. With fewer people to tend the fields, many farms are abandoned. The land lies fallow, recovering from centuries of intensive cultivation. When farming resumes, the soil is richer than it's been in generations. Labor is suddenly valuable. Peasants who survive can demand wages, choose where to work, even eat meat occasionally. But they still need vegetables, and now there are fewer people to grow them. Market gardens spring up around cities. Professional gardeners become wealthy. The social status of vegetables, and the people who grow them, actually rises. New techniques arrive from the Islamic world via Spain and Sicily. Raised beds, irrigation channels, crop rotation systems more sophisticated than anything Northern Europe has tried. The Moors have been practicing intensive agriculture for centuries, making the desert bloom. Now their techniques are spreading north. By 1400, you're being grown in ways your ancestors couldn't have imagined, double digging to loosen soil 2 feet deep, succession planting to ensure continuous harvests, companion planting, though they still don't understand why growing certain plants together works, they just know it does. The Columbian Exchange. Your world explodes. It's 1492. Columbus has just discovered the Americas. You have no idea that your world is about to be turned upside down, literally in some cases, as new root vegetables arrive from across the Atlantic. The potato is coming. The tomato is coming. Corn, squash, beans, unlike anything Europe has seen. These American vegetables will eventually push you from your throne as the survival crop of the poor. But that's still centuries away. For now, people are suspicious of these new arrivals. Tomatoes are considered poisonous. Potatoes are fit only for animals. But here's what's really happening. The global vegetable exchange is accelerating. Not just from America to Europe, but everywhere to everywhere. Asian vegetables are reaching Europe via Portuguese traders. African vegetables are crossing the Mediterranean. European vegetables, including you, are being planted in colonies worldwide. You're about to become global. European colonists will plant you in Virginia, in New Amsterdam, in the Caribbean. You'll grow in Australian convict gardens and South African Dutch settlements. You're not just a European vegetable anymore. You're a world vegetable. But in Europe, your golden age is ending. As new crops arrive and agricultural techniques improve, you're gradually relegated from essential to optional, from staple to side dish, from survival to stereotype, the boring vegetable that children refuse to eat. What you leave behind. Let's be honest about your legacy. You're not the vegetable that launched 1,000 ships. That's pepper. You're not the vegetable that changed world cuisine. That's the tomato. You're not even the vegetable that solved hunger. That's the potato eventually. But you did something more fundamental. You kept civilization alive during its darkest period. When Rome fell and Europe descended into chaos, you were there. When Vikings sailed into the unknown, you were in their ships. When peasants had nothing else, they had you. You taught humans about cultivation, about seasonal eating, about food storage. Every technique developed to grow, preserve, and prepare you was later applied to better, more exciting vegetables. You were the beta test for agricultural civilization. The monasteries that grew you preserved not just vegetables, but knowledge itself. While they were copying manuscripts and maintaining libraries, they were also maintaining seed stocks and cultivation techniques. The Renaissance didn't just spring from rediscovered Greek texts, it grew from soil that had been carefully tended for 1,000 years. The end that isn't. It's 1500 AD. The medieval period is officially ending, though nobody knows it yet. You're still growing in the same gardens, still feeding the same people, still playing your unglamorous but essential role. In Antwerp, one of Europe's richest cities, merchants are dining on peacock and drinking wine worth more than houses. But their servants are eating turnip pottage, same as their ancestors did 700 years ago. Some things don't change, except everything is changing. Printing presses are spreading agricultural knowledge faster than ever. Books about gardening are being published in vernacular languages, not just Latin. Regular people are learning techniques that were once monastery secrets. The Little Ice Age is coming. For the next 3 centuries, Europe will be colder than it's been in recorded history. The Thames will freeze solid, glaciers will advance, growing seasons will shorten, and guess what? You'll thrive. Because you always thrive when things get tough. That's what you do. New varieties are being developed. Dutch farmers are creating the orange carrot through selective breeding. Italian gardeners are perfecting the artichoke. English farmers are developing new turnip varieties that grow larger and store better. The age of scientific agriculture is beginning. But in most gardens, in most of Europe, you're still the same tough, reliable, unglamorous vegetable you've always been. Children still complain about eating you. Poor people still depend on you. Rich people still pretend you don't exist, while their servants stock their root cellars with hundreds of you. You're the vegetable equivalent of a medieval peasant. Overlooked, underappreciated, but absolutely essential to everything that came after. Without you, there's no survival through the Dark Ages, no energy for the Crusades, no backup food for failed harvests, no agricultural knowledge preserved and passed on. The turnip's truth. So here you are, a turnip at the end of the Middle Ages, looking back on 1,000 years of keeping humanity alive. You've traveled from monastery gardens to Viking longships, from crusader supply wagons to the holds of ships bound for the New World. You've been currency and medicine, survival food and social marker. You've been boiled into mush and carved into lanterns. Yes, before pumpkins, people carved turnips. You've been despised by the rich and blessed by the poor. You've been everything except glamorous. But glamour is overrated. While spices started wars and sugar enslaved millions, you just quietly did your job, growing, feeding, surviving, making sure that when everything else failed, there was still something in the ground, something in the cellar, something in the pot. The world is about to discover potatoes and tomatoes, corn and chocolate. The Columbian Exchange will transform global cuisine in ways medieval people couldn't imagine. You'll be pushed aside, forgotten, relegated to historical footnotes and livestock feed. But for 1,000 years, you held the line. When Rome fell, you were there. When the plague came, you survived. When the ice advanced, you adapted. You're not the hero of medieval history. You're the foundation it's built on. The boring, essential, overlooked foundation that made everything else possible. And that's the truth about medieval vegetables. They weren't just food. They were civilization itself, growing slowly in the dark soil, keeping humanity alive one harvest at a time. They were trade routes and medical systems, social hierarchies and survival strategies. They were the silent partners in humanity's long climb from the fall of Rome to the dawn of the modern age. You're a turnip, and you changed the world. not through glory or conquest, but through the simple, essential act of being there when you were needed most. And in the end, isn't that what really matters? The nobles can keep their peacocks and their pepper. The merchants can have their silk roads and their spice trades. But when winter comes, and the world turns cold and dark, when the stores run low and the harvest fails, everyone turns to you, the humble turnip, the vegetable that saved the world, one root at a time,